When you've lived as long as I have, you collect stories the way the snow collects on pine branches, layer after layer, each one with its own sparkle. Some are gentle and quiet, meant for very little ears, just learning what Christmas is. And some are for hearts that are a bit older, ready to hear about the mistakes we make, the temptations we feel, and the grace that comes when we choose a better way. This is one of those stories. Many winters ago, long before I wore a red suit or flew across the world in a single night, I visited a small stone church deep in the forested hills of an old country. The village nearby was poor but proud, its people hardened by long winters and softened by the habit of sharing what little they had. At the very top of the hill stood a manor house where a wealthy lord and his household lived. At the bottom of the hill, right where the road turned to mud in spring and ice in winter, stood the church. The priest of that church was a man named Father Bernard. He was not wicked, you understand? He had baptized babies, comforted the sick, buried the dead, and spoken words of hope over countless hearts. But like so many of us, he had one great weakness. He adored food. Now, I do enjoy a good cookie, as you might have heard. But Father Bernard's love of food went beyond simple pleasure. He thought about feasts while he prayed. He dreamed of roasted meats and buttered breads while he walked through the graveyard. He remembered the taste of last year's goose with such longing that it almost made him forget why Christmas was celebrated at all. Almost. That particular year, the lord of the manor had decided to host a grand Christmas feast unlike any the village had seen. Carts rumbled up the road for days, bringing barrels of wine, sacks of flour, heaps of vegetables, and cages of geese and chickens. The smells drifting from the manor kitchen could reach the churchyard on a good breeze. Roasting meats, spiced apples, fresh bread, and puddings rich with fruit. Father Bernard tried very hard to focus on his duties, but every time he stepped outside, the scent seemed to wrap around him like a mischievous hand, tugging his thoughts away from heaven and toward the dining hall. On Christmas Eve, as the last light faded from the sky and the stars began to prick through the darkness, the villagers gathered at the church for the great midnight celebration. According to the ancient tradition of that place, the priest was to say 3 low masses in a row, each one a quiet, solemn remembrance of the holy night when hope was born in a stable. Father Bernard knew this. He had said the 3 low masses many times before. But this year, as he put on his vestments in the chilly sacristy, his mind kept leaping ahead, not to the manger in Bethlehem, but to the steaming platters waiting up at the manor, where he had been promised a place of honor at the feast. 3 masses, he muttered, tugging his robe straight. 3 long, slow masses. By the time I finish, the goose will be dry, the puddings will be cold, and the best wine will be gone. He tried to shake off the thought, but his stomach answered with a loud, complaining growl. Now, nearby, closer than he knew, someone was listening. Not an angel, not a saint, but a sly little presence that always slips closer when people forget what matters most. Call it temptation, call it mischief, call it the whispering of the darker corners of the heart. It heard the priest grumbling and smiled to itself. As Father Bernard left the sacristy and stepped toward the altar, he felt a strange chill on the back of his neck, as if a window had been opened in a room that had no windows. He glanced around, but saw only his small, familiar church. Stone walls, wooden beams, flickering candles, villagers kneeling in their patched but tidy clothes. He took a breath and began the first Mass. At first, he spoke the words with his usual care. But as he reached the middle of the service, a thought slipped into his mind, quiet as a footstep on snow. "You know these people," the thought whispered. "They are tired. They are hungry. Surely they want to get home quickly to their own small celebrations. Wouldn't it be kinder to make this shorter? You can speak the words a little faster. Skip a pause here, a sentence there. No one would mind. And think how grateful you will be to slip into the warmth of the manor sooner." Father Bernard's stomach rumbled again, as if agreeing. The smell of roasting goose seemed to float into the church on some invisible current. For a moment he hesitated, torn between duty and desire. And that, my friends, is the crucial moment. Not the great traumatic choices, but the small, quiet ones, where we decide what kind of person we are going to be. Father Bernard sighed and thought, "It is just 1 year. Just a little quicker. Christmas will not be ruined if I shorten things a bit." So he began to hurry. The words of the prayers came faster, like steps taken by someone late for an appointment. The silences grew shorter. The readings, once savored like fine music, were nearly rushed through like laundry lists. Some of the villagers glanced at one another. This was not the gentle, steady rhythm they were used to. But they said nothing. They knelt, they stood, they murmured their responses, and the first Mass ended sooner than it should have. The Temptation's grin widened. Between the first and second Masses, Father Bernard ducked back into the sacristy. The little clock on the shelf ticked cheerfully, as if trying to encourage patience. Instead, he saw the hands and thought, "Ah, if I keep this up, I will reach the manor before the first toast is even poured." A shadow appeared in the corner of the room, a patch of darkness that seemed too thick for such a small candlelit space. From within it, a voice spoke, sounding very much like his own thoughts had just moments before. "Well done, Father," it purred. "You were very efficient. Your flock looked almost grateful. No harm done, and such time saved. Now, imagine if the second Mass were even swifter. Think of that crackling skin on the goose." Father Bernard's heart gave a jolt. Who are you?" he whispered. The shadow only chuckled. "Just a friend of comfort and convenience. Just the echo of the hunger you feel. I only want what you want. A warm seat, a full plate, a cup held high, while others are still trudging home." He knew, deep down, what stood before him. Every child who has stared too long at another's present. Every grown-up who has felt jealousy prickle like thorns. Every person who has quietly chosen selfishness over kindness has felt that presence too. It never truly forces. It only suggests, cajoles, persuades. Father Bernard swallowed hard, crossed himself, and marched back into the church. Perhaps if he had confessed his weakness then and there, if he had taken a deep breath and chosen differently, the night would have gone another way. But he told himself, "I can handle this. I am not doing anything terrible. Just a little haste. Just this once." So he hurried more. The second Mass passed in a blur. The people sensed it even more now. The solemn beauty of Christmas seemed to slip through their fingers like water through a sieve. Some felt disappointed, but did not understand why. Others, thinking of their own meager suppers, found themselves half grateful, half sad. Back into the sacristy went the priest, with the shadow following like a satisfied cat. "Voici," it crooned. "Almost there. One more, and you are free. The Lord of the manor will greet you like a brother. The tables will groan under the weight of the feast. Why linger over words everyone has heard before, when such pleasures wait for you?" Father Bernard's mouth was dry. He thought of the villagers, of the manger, of the holy mystery he was entrusted to honor. And he thought of the golden roast on the Lord's table. The two images wrestled inside him. He sighed. "Just one more. I will make this one quick. Then I will make it up next year." He stepped out again, and the third Mass began. He rushed now, truly rushed. The words tumbled out, stumbling over one another. Moments that should have been held like precious jewels were treated like stones to be kicked along a road. Before anyone could quite realize what had happened, it was over. "Go in peace," he said, though there was not much peace in him at all. The villagers filed out into the frosty night, puzzled, a little hollow. They tried to tell themselves that it did not matter, but some part of them knew that something sacred had been hurried past in favor of something else. And Father Bernard, he nearly ran to the sacristy, tore off his vestments, flung on his heavy cloak, and strode up the hill toward the manor. the shadow gliding along at his heels. He reached the great hall, filled with light and laughter, the tables piled high with food just as he had imagined. Roasted meats glistened, bread steamed, puddings quivered, spices scented the air so strongly it was almost dizzying. The Lord greeted him heartily, clapped him on the back, and sat him at the place of honor. Plates were filled, glasses were raised, laughter rang out. The shadow settled at his feet like an obedient dog. "See," it whispered, "was it not worth it?" Father Bernard took the first bite, and that is when the true magic of the night finally woke up. The taste that filled his mouth was not rich or savory. It was ash, dry, bitter ash. He blinked, coughed, tried another bite. Ash again. He grabbed his cup and drank. The wine, so fragrant a moment ago, felt like dust on his tongue. Around him, everyone else was eating and drinking with delight. They did not notice his struggle. To them, the feast was everything he had expected. To him, every morsel turned to ash the moment it touched his lips. He dropped his fork, staring down at his plate in horror. The shadow's eyes gleamed from beneath the table. "Why?" Father Bernard whispered. "What is happening to me?" "Surely you knew," the shadow said softly, "that when you hollow out the heart of something holy just to satisfy your hunger, the very thing you chased becomes hollow too. You rush through the sacred to get to the feast. Now the feast rushes through you and leaves nothing behind." The hall spun. For a moment, the priest thought he might faint. He stumbled to his feet, mumbled some excuse, and fled into the cold night air. Outside, the stars looked down with a bright, clear gaze. The church on the hill below glowed faintly from a single forgotten candle left burning. Father Bernard stared at it, suddenly feeling more shaken than hungry. He sank to his knees in the snow. "Have I really traded the heart of Christmas for a plate of food?" he asked the silence. "Have I rushed past the manger to get to the banquet?" In that still, clear night, the world answered not with words, but with a quiet pressing on his soul, like a hand laid gently on a trembling shoulder. I had been watching, of course. I had seen his struggle, his capitulation, his horror. I had watched that last bite turn to ash. And as I watched him kneeling there, shoulders hunched, breath puffing in small, desperate clouds, I knew this was not a man who needed punishment. He needed a chance to choose again. So I did what I'm often permitted to do in such moments. I wrapped the night around him like a cloak, and I let him dream. In his dream, he saw himself grow old. He saw Christmas after Christmas pass in a blur of feasts and hurried prayers. He saw the villagers grow more distant, their faces shadowed by disappointment they didn't quite understand. He saw children who once loved the sacred stories now shrug and hurry through them because they had learned from him that the real joy lay elsewhere. He saw himself finally sitting alone at a table piled high with food, but no one came to join him. The candles guttered, the plates cooled. The only sound was the ticking of a distant clock, counting the moments he had wasted. He cried out in his sleep. Then the dream shifted. He saw the same church, the same villagers, the same cold winter nights, but this time he took his time. He spoke the words of the three masses slowly, with reverence. He let the silences stretch, not as empty gaps, but as spaces where hearts could breathe. He watched the faces of his people soften, brighten, fill with something that tasted richer than any feast: peace. He saw them leave the church with lighter steps, carrying that peace into their small homes, around their modest tables. He saw children fall asleep with smiles, not just full bellies. He saw his own place at the manor feast, still waiting for him, even after the masses were done. Because what is meant for you in love is rarely truly lost by taking the right path to get there. He woke with tears on his cheeks, the taste of ash still clinging faintly to his tongue, and the church bell ringing for the dawn Christmas Mass. This time he did not hurry. He put on his vestments with care. He walked to the altar slowly. When he spoke the words, he did so as if each sentence was a gift he was unwrapping in front of his people. The 3 low masses that morning were not spoken in a rush, but in gratitude. The villagers listened, and something deep inside them, some small injured thing, began to heal. As for the feast at the manor, it did not vanish because he had taken his time. When he arrived, the Lord welcomed him warmly, and the goose's skin still crackled, the bread still steamed, the wine still glowed like garnet in the glasses. When he took his first bite, it tasted exactly as it should, rich, savory, and because his heart was in the right place, wonderful. The shadow that had followed him so closely slunk away, thin and pale in the bright glow of a man who had remembered what he was for. So when I think of the 3 low masses, I think of Father Bernard standing between 2 tables, the simple, sacred one in his church and the lavish, tempting one at the manor. I think of how he nearly lost both by rushing toward one and away from the other. And I think of how grace reached out, took him by the shoulders, and turned him around. Lou and I may not be priests on a cold hill, but we all have our own versions of that choice. We have moments when we are tempted to hurry through what is meaningful just to reach what is pleasurable. We rush through stories to get to the presents, through conversations to get to our screens, through ordinary days to get to some imagined better time. Christmas whispers a different invitation. Slow down. Honor what is sacred. Give your full heart to the moments that deserve it. The quiet prayers, the shared meals, the soft words of gratitude, the listening, the presence. The feasts and fun will still be there. In fact, they will taste sweeter when you have not traded your integrity to reach them. So this year, when you feel that tug to rush, through a meal, through a story, through a hug, remember Father Bernard and his 3 low masses. Remember the taste of ash and the second chance, and ask yourself, what am I hurrying past right now that might be far more precious than what I'm rushing toward? If you can pause, breathe, and choose the better part, then the magic of Christmas will be very close indeed. And I, flying quietly overhead, will smile and whisper, "Well done, you remembered."